Good morning, everybody. Hopefully you had a wonderful weekend. This is going to be a really information-heavy phone call, but I think it's extremely important phone call. What's the number one thing people are worried about in retirement? Or number one or number two? Lifestyle. What allows them to live that lifestyle? Michael's got it. Income, Michael says. You're right. Income. Right. So we're going to talk about income today. And I'm going to show you how there's been three major research studies done by some of the best minds in the financial industry that have shown how we can increase people's income by 25 to 100%, 25 to 100%, and decrease their chance of running out of money. So let's talk about this. If we increase their income, wouldn't logic say that we would be increasing or decreasing their chance of running out of money? If we're going to actually show them how to increase their income by 25% to 100%, would it make sense that we'd probably be increasing or decreasing their chance of running out of money? If you're drawing more money out of an account, what's likely would that happen? You're going to run out of money, or you're not going to run out of money? Yeah, Tom's got it. Yeah, so you guys get that? So the fact is, logically, if we're going to pull out more money, the chance of running out of money should go up. But I'm going to show you what these research studies have shown, that we'll be able to increase people's income and at the same time decrease their chance of running out of money. So if you're armed with that information, what kind of leverage does that give you on every other one of your advisor competition out there? Huge. So we're going to go through a lot here. So am I pardoned for giving you a ton of information and verbiage here? Because I want you to understand that it's just not me spouting off. This is actually research that has done this. So we'll just quickly review last week's 5Q tape breakdown, a little trap to avoid when you're telling stories. Now, let's get into the fun stuff. So income has become extremely dangerous topic, whether people know it or not. And we've actually had a few warning signs here in the last week. And I've been telling people, and I think a lot of us have been telling people, that don't worry about Social Security because you're not going to really be affected. What's starting to happen though? What are we starting to see? Can we really with full confidence say that at this point? So Social Security Medicare funds face insolvency, report finds. According to the report, the cost of Social Security, the federal retirement program, will exceed its income in 2020 for the first time since 1982. The program's reserve fund is projected to be depleted in 16 years, at which point recipients will get smaller payments than they are scheduled to receive if Congress does not act. Meanwhile, Medicare's hospital insurance is expected to run out 2026, the same date that was projected a year ago. At that point, doctors, hospitals, nursing homes would not receive their full compensation from the program. Patients would face more of a financial burden. And what kind of intestinal fortitude do any of our politicians have for dealing with this right now? Yeah, none. None. Which means they're going to delete. And here's the thing: when we only have 15 years, or we only have 7 years, or we're out of money right now, every year has what kind of, that they don't deal with this, has what kind of an effect? A little effect or a huge effect? Every delay, every 1 year delay. And do you think they're going to get anything done? Is anybody going to touch the third rail of Social Security Medicare in 2019 or 2020 during the election? So that means we've just shaved off a huge chunk of time they would have to deal with this. So that means that by the time we get to 2026 for Medicare, or we're already dealing with the shortage in Social Security, what's going to have to happen? Small changes or big changes when they finally have to do that? Huge changes. Huge changes. So should we be talking or thinking about our clients' income? Because what percentage of your clients rely to some degree on their Social Security income and Medicare? All of them. Yeah, unless you get people who are unbelievably wealthy. I mean, if they've got $10 million or more, they don't need to worry about Social Security. If they have $10,000 million or less, they got to be worried about Social Security, Medicare. Because how much would, even if they're not worried about Social Security, if they didn't have Medicare, what's that going to take out of their chunk every year? Chunk of income every year. Yeah. So why is this important? Well, up until 2012, many efforts had been focusing on either to boost the accumulation or maximize the investment returns during the accumulation phase and even potentially after the drawdown period. But there was not been much attention spent on exactly how a retiree should be drawing down his or her income. Most retirement income strategies still consider withdrawals from the securities portfolio and maximizing Social Security benefit techniques. So most of people are still talking about how can we withdraw money out of our stock and bond accounts and maximize the Social Security benefits. The latest possible date, and perhaps and saying, hey, don't withdraw Social Security until the latest possible date. However, very little in the way of sophistication has been added to these strategies. So it's hey, the 4% rule, hey, the 3.8% rule. You know, it's been all these. There's not been much done on the sophisticated way we can draw it. I mean, our sale is sophisticated or not sophisticated. I mean, I think it works awesome. Jeff has done a great job with that, putting that together and helping you guys do it. It does awesome. But on the sophisticated scale, and we don't want to be complicated, but on the sophisticated scale, are we still basically drawing from stocks and guaranteed monies? Yeah. I mean, it's the best way to do it. But we haven't done a lot more past that. Now, in the last few years, however, the industry has recognized that there are still a couple of issues to be addressed. The first is that 401ks just are not going to do it. Guys, is a $500,000 401k going to do it for people over the next 30 years? No, it's not. For most people, their ending 401k balance, even when combined with other savings, Social Security, is just, so if you have $1 million, even at a 4%, that's $40,000 a year. If their Social Security starts to go down, what's that going to do? I mean, isn't that a little problem or a big problem? And how many people really? I've been noticing the numbers. Are more and more people worried about running out of money and less income, or less and less people worried about it? Unfortunately, it's less and less people are worried about it. They think they've got, the market's gone up. They think the market's going to go up the same way it has over the last 9 years for the next 9 years. Is that going to happen? No, it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. But there's all of the study or all the surveys have shown that people are becoming less and less concerned about running out of money, and they should be more and more concerned about running out of money. The second issue of this kind is sleepier and sneakier one is that even with adequate savings, even if you have the amount of the theoretically is enough to provide retirement income, the investment volatility and sequence return. So even if you have $3 million, if the market goes down 50%, what happens to that $3 million? All of a sudden you're in problems again, right? So uncertainty, mortality, the fact that we're living longer create a very significant risk for almost everybody that they're going to exhaust their assets before they die. And people are less concerned than they were before. The answer to both problems, and this is now becoming more generally known, is that you just do not take from your portfolio when it is down. Because what happens if you draw from your savings portfolio in a down market, you're doubling down on exhaustion risk. And that's what we saw with the 4% rule, right? During 2000 and 2008, how did those people get clobbered? They had to pull money out during the 3 years from 2000 to 2003 and 2008 and 2009. How did they get clobbered? But did they ever come? David says they had to wait till 7 years to get back to ground even. But if they were pulling money out, did they ever make it back to ground even? See, if you didn't pull out, it took you 7 years, it took you 13 years. But if you pulled money out, did you ever get back to ground even? So what he's saying here is the answer to both problems is don't pull money out when it's down. So we have to tell our clients that what? Live off of Social Security. So if they're used to living at $70,000 or $80,000 a year, and then we ask them to live at $35,000 a year off their Social Security, can most people do that? Can they have their income? So that's a problem, right? That's a problem. So here's another story. Here's the bad news. Current market conditions bode horribly for near-term retirees. In fact, the U.S. is in uncharted waters, researchers say, because the concurrent forces of stock valuations near record highs and bond yields historically low. That's those two things happening at the same time. That's like what? Remember we talked last week about those storms, those two storms hitting at the same time? We view this as an elevated risk for retiring, says Michael Kitces, partner, blah, blah, blah. The worst time to retire, this is as close as you get to an all-time market highs and dangerously high valuations that make it risky time to retire. The worst time to retire is when stocks have run for a while without an intervening bear market, which is a downturn of 20%. Have we seen that? How long has it been since we've seen a 20% downturn, guys? Yeah, 9 years. 9 years. So this is when the expected returns are negative. Conversely, he said the best time to retire is during a bear market because client portfolios will benefit from good runs in the upswing. In practice, this translates to a difference in yearly spending levels that maintain a healthy portfolio balance. A client retiring immediately before a bear market will have a lower sustainable amount of spending throughout retirement, and that's throughout, not temporarily, throughout retirement than the same client retiring at the end of a bear market. So the CAPE is so right. This is from the same article. Is showing that where are our stock prices right now? Even with the earnings, and a lot of, I don't know if you saw last week, 2 weeks ago, a lot of companies had record earnings. Last week, guess what happened to a lot of earnings of big companies? Completely missed. So how high are we right now? Since 1900, how high is the stock valuations right now? Unbelievably high. And then we add that to how low is interest rates for people to put money into bonds or into something that's guaranteed. See, that's the problem. There hasn't been a point in the last 140 years, since the CAPE ratio has been this high and bond yields this low. This signals a pretty good chance returns will be lower for retirees in the near future. So this is the way the historical averages for the S&P 500. This is what is more likely we're going to be looking at. So lower than historical means. So what if, let's look at, what if we'd retired during the best of times? What if we'd retired during the worst of times? So toward this end, I chose the years 1966 for a poor retirement. So if you, 1966 is right before a 10-year bear market. Actually, it was almost a 20-year bear market, to be honest. And then 1982 was great retirement. 1946 was an average retirement. So first, 1966 represents a tough year for retirees. It triggered the lowest sustainable spending rate of just 4% for the constant inflation-adjusted strategy. So we're going to look at the worst case scenario, 1966 to 1995. So a 30-year retirement. So the time of path of real spending and wealth, performance of all strategies for a 1960 retiree for 4% initial withdrawal rate, 50-50 asset allocation, rolling 30-year retirements. So you can see this is all the different ways that you could have strategies, income withdrawal strategies that you could have used. So as far as withdrawal amounts, what happened to withdrawal amounts? This is 4% when you first started. What happened to withdrawal amounts? Did only one of them out of the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 different ways you could withdraw, only one were people able to withdraw at a higher level, and even there was a huge dip in the middle. If you think about it, guys, when do you want to have a higher amount? Early or late? When do most people want to spend the most money? Early in their retirement or late in their retirement? Yeah, early. And as it ends up, guess what? During their prime retirement years, they had to spend less. And even spending less, what happened to their principal? They started out with $100 of principal. What happened to their principal by the end of 30 years? In 8 out of the 10. Down. Spent less, ended up with less. Good or bad? So that was the unlucky guy. That was the guy that retired, or the gal that retired in 1966. So let's look at a strong. Well, the strong, look at that. If you retired at the exact right time, 1982, so you went from 1982 to 2011, the best 30-year time period, look at what happened. Only one out of the only one out of the 10 was below what they started with. The other 9 were above. And their income, what happened? Went up. But look at the difference here. Look at the difference between these two charts. Is that a little difference or a huge difference? So should we promise our clients anything going forward with what's going to happen with stocks and bonds and whatever else? No, because we don't know if they're here and we don't know if they're here or somewhere in between. And those differences are huge. But, do you understand now why I think that those of you that have been working with me a long time, what do I think about financial plans and income plans where you project out what's going to happen, what they're going to spend, what inflation rate's going to be, and how much they're going to make? So doing any type of financial plan where you're predicting the income, you're predicting the inflation, you're predicting what they're going to make is what? And you all said it, everything from BS, bogus, to everybody's got some very creative ways of saying it's crap. So why don't we use that with 5Q? All we try to do is put them in the best place possible for right now. I try to make no predictions in the future. Does that make sense? You see why? So this is good information for you to use. If anybody says that they have a financial advisor doing income plans, say, great. Are they planning for this scenario or are they planning for that scenario? Because how different is what's going to happen? Huge. So what are our options? Well, there is one option. Here's one option. Part-time work can really boost the odds of your nest egg being sufficient. So probability of $1 million portfolio lasting to age 90 at a 4% withdrawal rate. If you stop working at 55, there's only a 57% chance of it working. If you work an extra year, look at how just working an extra year, how much help that can give you. A lot. But then what we're asking clients to do is what? Work longer. Now, what if they found, what percentage of people, even if they wanted to work longer, what percentage of people were able to continue to do that? High percentage or a low percentage? Even if they wanted, very low. Yeah, it's low. So even if, and it's because either health gets in the way or their spouse's health gets in the way or the company does what? What is the easiest cost savings a company can do? Let go a older person or they let the older guys go. Why? Because they can hire a younger person to do it and pay them what? Less. So then when the guy was making $90,000 a year, he gets laid off. What's he going to make now? $15 an hour, right? So this is an option, but is this what? How many of you are comfortable with going to your client saying, "Okay, here's our new income plan. You got to work longer." How do clients love that? Not much. Not much. Tell them to spend less, they hate you. Tell them to work more, they hate you. So we'd like to avoid that if we can, right? We'd like to avoid that if we can. And really, do we want to take on a client who hasn't saved enough to retire yet? And say, we can grow you out of that problem. We're going to be a really great investment advisor, and I'm going to grow you out of that problem. Should we ever do that? No. All you've done then is signed yourself up for a lawsuit down the road. So we cannot take somebody on as a formal client who has not saved enough for retirement. So what we need to be is smart with the money they've already saved and make sure that they can spend the most with the least amount of chance of running out. So we've talked about in our different ways to have withdrawal done. So there's 10 of them here in the American Institute of Economic Research. Is the 10 we talk about on our fullchecklist.org website. It's the ones we talk about in our goals down here. So constant dollar, inflation adjusted, constant percentage. And if you haven't read this, guys, it's a good read. It's a good read to understand that with the exact same investments, without changing the investments at all, but using these different strategies, how much more or less, how much more money they could pull out, or how much less money they could pull out. What happens to their chance of running out of money, and which one is the lowest way to pull out for tax purposes? It's pretty interesting. And that's where we use this in the goals. Remember, we said the goal number 2. When we say how important is it that your money lasts through a lifetime, what does everybody say? It's very important. It's a 1 through 5. It's a 5. The problem with that is how many of them think their current advisor is helping them do that? When we talk to a client that has an advisor, how many of them think that their advisor is helping their money last through a lifetime? Yeah, everyone. Everyone thinks their advisor is doing that. So we have to come up with something that's very clear that has them understand that their advisor has not shown them something. It has to be black and white. They're like, wow, my advisor never told me that. But instead, when we say, how important is it that your money lasts through a lifetime, 1 through 5, they all think, yeah, it's important. That's why my guys helped me with that. So we have to come up with something very specific. And I'm going to show you, we've changed this. I'm going to show you how we've changed it to make it very clear at the end that their advisor hasn't talked about this. Because we do try to make sure, well, how important is that we run your situation through a scenario where without changing any of your current investments, you notice that's bolded and underlined. How many times do you want to emphasize without changing your current investments, you could increase your income and at the same time have a less chance of running out of money and at the same time pay less taxes? On a scale of 1 to 5, how important would it be that I could run an analysis for you, which would show you how to, using your current investments, it would do these 3 things? Yeah, everybody says that on a scale of 1 to 10, it'd be a 10, and on one scale of 1 to 5, it'd be a 5. Everybody says that. But what if we could even be more specific here and put this on steroids? Would that be a good thing this early in the goal session? And I'm going to show you how we do that, okay? So we talk about these 10 different ways, but there's actually even more. There's this is one was included. This is included. But then we have the Bengen's dollar floor to ceiling method. We have Vanguard's percentage floor to ceiling method. We have the Kitch's racketing rule, Guyton's Klinger's decision, Zolt's glide. So this is also included in those 10. So we actually have added about another 4 or 5 different ways to withdraw money. Unfortunately, all of them, well, if you can see, depending on, there's a huge difference here on how they would work. So constant inflation adjusted 4.18%. Real spending would be $4,000 a year for the rest in the first 10 years. And by the real spending in the last 30 years, it'd be $4,180, because you don't change. Constant inflation adjusted means that this doesn't change, right? But look at the differences in the other times of withdrawal. Same investments, same exact investments with different ways of pulling the money out. Do you get that? Same investments, different ways of pulling money out. So you have, look at this one, started with a very high amount, 8,000, but it ended up with a very low amount by the end of 30 years because they started out with pulling too much. So look at the differences here. Are these numbers even close to being the same? So does this prove to you that how you pull money out with the exact same investments is a huge issue or a small issue? And what do 99% of advisors use? Any of these things, or do they use a straight constant inflation adjusted rule to one degree or another? What are most advisors using? How much time and effort do they put into thinking, what is the best way for people with their current investments to pull money out? They don't spend any time on it. So why is that important to you? How fluid and fluent should you be with this discussion with clients? Because it makes you look different in a manner that they're concerned about or not concerned about. It makes you look different. It makes you look smarter. It makes you look more educated. It makes you look more like you've put time and effort into the number 1 issue people have, or at least number 2, because health is also in there. But the number 1 or number 2 issue people have, which is what? I want the most income with the least amount of risk of running out of money. So this is something you guys should be fluent on. You should watch this video over and over. You should print these things and have them readily available, okay? But there's actually a new and improved safe withdrawal rate. There's a new and improved safe withdrawal rate that will increase the amount you can pull out by at least 25%, if not up to 100%. So anywhere from 25% to 100%. And it's been validated by the Journal of Financial Planning. Is this a wackadoodle journal, or is this, do they only print research that has been peer reviewed? It's well respected. So integrating the home equity and retirement savings through Rule of 30. By Neuwirth, Sachs, and Sachs. This has also been a research done by Wade Foe. Does anybody know what Wade Foe is? Is he respected or not respected? So there's also another one done by another group of people I think that they mentioned in here. So what are they talking about in here? They're talking about assumptions and background for the analysis. Economic concerns of retirees. Retirees have several major economic concerns. First and notably, inflation-adjusted cash flow survival through retirement, right? Making sure this is lifestyle. Make sure on an inflation-adjusted basis, I can continue to pull the money I'm pulling out right now so I can maintain my lifestyle. Number two, additional cash available in case of emergency. What if the roof starts leaking? What if I have a health problem? What if the kids need help? And leaving money. Are these the three most important things for people who are retiring or retired when it comes to their money? Besides health, is this their three most important money-based concerns? It was assumed in this analysis that the overriding economic concern for many retirees is maintain cash flow. So they're saying the number one is lifestyle. Number two would be additional cash in case of emergency. And number three, the kids get what they get. So according to the quantitative analysis presented in this paper on that concern, as part of this analysis, the following question was explored. Is there an optimal percentage of total retirement income resources that a broad range of retirees could withdraw from one or both sources each year that would maximize retirement income while minimizing the probability of exhausting all assets before their end of retirement? So they're saying the most amount of money with the least amount of chances of running out of money. Make sense? The results presented here express the initial distribution rate in the traditional way so that the comparisons can be made to the 4% rule. Since that's the one that 90% of advisors are using, the 4% rule or some kind of 4% rule, that static rule, that's what they're going to use as a comparison, okay? But these results also indicate expressing the initial withdrawal rate as a fraction of total retirement. Yeah, I got some other numbers. Yeah, it could be not the 4% rule, it's 2.5% rule, or the 3.8% rule. It doesn't matter. They're saying, because what you're going to find, what did we find out with a static rate of return? A static pullout. Was that the best way to do it or not? Was a static way, I don't care if it's 4%, 3%, 2%, because if you change this, you would change all these. Any way possible is a static way of pulling money out the smartest way to do it? No, it's not. There are better, more proficient ways of doing it. Because why would you want to only pull out 2 if you could have pulled out 4 with one of these other ones and ended up with more money at the end? So would you want to pull out 2% if you could have used one of these other ones and pulled out 4% and ended up with more money at the end? So do you see how static rate or pulling out is silly? Silly, silly, silly. Okay. So they're going to use the 4% rule as a comparison. Obviously, if you change that 4 to a 3 to a 2 or whatever, it's a sliding scale that applies equally to every single one. Does that make sense or not? I need some yays or yays. Yeah, okay. So results indicate that expressing the initial withdrawal rate as a fraction of total retirement income resources may be more useful and more broadly applicable. As shown below, in the context of investment returns consistent with the historical averages, a rule of 30 where the initial distribution rate is 1/30th of the total retirement income, including home value, provides a more stable and consistent retirement income strategy across various classes. Now, here's the thing. These other ones are way complicated. When you start looking at the endowment formula, Bengen's dollar floor to ceiling, Vanguard's percentage floor to ceiling, Kitz's ratcheting, do you think these are simple and easy to describe to a client or difficult to describe to a client? Increasingly difficult to describe to a client. How simple would it be, say, let's take all of your assets, all of your retirement assets, all your regular assets, and your home equity, and let's divide that by 30. How complicated is that? Or is that about as simple and easy as you can get? Yeah, it's about as simple and easy as you can get. So we're going to look at 4 different retirees. Retiree number 1 is the mass affluent retiree. They have $400,000 in home equity, and they have $800,000 in retirement savings. Number 2, they're house-rich mass affluent. They have $800,000 in home equity, $400,000 in assets. Retiree number 3, almost affluent retiree, $150,000, $300,000 in $150,000 in home equity, $300,000 in retirement savings, and house-rich, $300,000 in home equity and $150,000 in retirement savings. So these are 4 people, these two look to have the same net worth. These people have the same net worth, but they have different amount where their money is in different places. Okay, so these are the people we're going to look at. Do these seem like a typical clients, especially the top retirement number one, number two, the typical clients we're going to run into? Yeah. So strategy number one, there's two different strategies we can do using their retirement assets and reverse mortgage. One is we can establish an HECM or establish a reverse mortgage credit line at the outset of retirement at the beginning of the first year of retirement. The first year's draw is taken from the portfolio. The amount that draws is equal to 1/30th of the total retirement income sources, or 1/34th if you want to be more conservative. At the end of each year, the investment performance of the portfolio during that year is determined. If the performance was positive, the ensuing year's income comes from the portfolio. If the performance is negative, the ensuing year's income is drawn from the reverse mortgage credit line. Strategy number two is from the outset, you withdraw money only from the portfolio and do not establish a reverse mortgage credit line unless the portfolio is exhausted. This is the last resort strategy. Okay, so one is what? One is you establish the reverse mortgage up front, because could laws change, guys? Could the HECM go away? Yeah, they could. But generally when they do that, they allow people to grandfather in. Now, also, what they're doing here is that when we have a bad stock year or a bad portfolio year, what do? Where do we draw from? For strategy number one? From the HEMCO, yeah, from the HMC. Now, strategy number two says what? No. We're just going to look at your retirement, and we're going to take 4% of your retirement. If we run out of that, then we can always dip into your house. And which way do most, again, 95% of advisors, how do they approach it? Strategy number one or strategy number two? Yeah, and it says right here. We're going to look at figure 1 and 2 and it says demonstrate the dramatic cash flow survival probability of strategy 1 over strategy 2, which is the strategy recommended by many financial planners. I would say by most financial planners. So we got one advisor says, yeah, most advisors use strategy number 1. Guys. How many times have you run across a client that said, yeah, my advisor's withdrawal strategy is we have an HECM and we're drawing out of that as well from the portfolio? How often have you run across a client that has an advisor told them that? Yeah, never. So strategy number 1 is the best way, but all of our competition is talking about number 2. So the 30-year calculation repeated 10,000 times in this study. In a certain number of those repetitions, the cash flow survived 30 years, and the other repetitions did not. The most 3 significant determinants of cash flow survival are the initial withdrawal rate, the sequence of returns, and the strategy for dealing with negative returns. Do you get that? This is and would people understand these 3 things? So when we're looking at what we're going to do, we have to look historically at what? We have to use Monte Carlo for what? We've got to say, what withdrawal rate should we use? What could happen if we get bad returns at the beginning instead of good returns at the beginning for sequence returns? And what are we going to do with our portfolio during the negative times? Now, what do most advisors tell their clients? Well, during negative times, don't spend money. Guys, with our clients, we've talked about this before. When I'm 64 years old, if you tell me don't spend money for 4 years, how much can life change from age 64 to 48? I'm sorry, 64 to 48, 64 to 68. What can happen to your health? What can happen to your ability to be mobile? What can happen to your spouse's health, ability to be mobile? What can happen to your mother? What can happen to your father? What can happen to your children? Do people want to wait to take vacations? Or is that changing their lifestyle? And when they retire, they want their lifestyle to remain the same. So in each of these 10,000 repetitions, the initial withdrawal rate was the same. The average investment return was the same. Get it? The average investment return was the same, which is how basically all income plans or financial plans say, well, I'm going to assume you're going to get a 7% stock return. I'm going to assume it's the same, but let's look at how the sequence of those investment returns can hurt somebody or help somebody. Being randomly selected was not the same in each. A simple count was made of the cash flow survival over 10,000 trials. The 2 worksheets run simultaneously in each trial, and results of 10,000 trials shown on a histogram of each worksheet. The percentage of the repetitions in which the cash flow survived was termed as cash flow survivability probability. The primary focus on this comparison, the cash flow and survivability probabilities of the two strategies for each representative. So here it is. So these are the two mass affluent, with the 1.2 million between 800,000 in their house and 400,000 in their or $400,000 in their house, 800,000 in their investment portfolio, or 800,000 in their house, $400,000 in their investment portfolio. If they had strategy number one, they would have been able to pull out 5% initial draw rate from their 800,000 or 40,000. So is 5%? How is 5% compared to 4%? That's how much of a bump is that, guys? 25% higher. 25% higher. So they're going to be able to pull out 25% higher than what a typical advisor would tell their client that they could pull out. So, and that's because what we do is we take the total 1.2 and divide it by 1/30th, right? So what happens when they pull out during the bad years from their home equity? They have a 90% survival rate over the 30 years. If they instead pull out 4% or pull out 5% from their 800,000 of the retirement portfolio, if they pull out 5%, what's going to happen? They have a much higher likelihood of it what? Running out of money. Over here, what happens? First of all, they're going to have a withdrawal rate of, because you can divide 1/30th again, right? Of all the value. So here, what's going to happen is if you pull out 8.63% initial draw rate out of your 400,000, right? You're still going to be, so you're taking out much higher percentage of your retirement, but are you getting more or less income? Instead of pulling out 5, you're pulling out 8.63% out of your retirement portfolio. That's right. So you're getting less. And what's happening to your chance of running out of money? If you do strategy number 2, where you just pull out that money out of your retirement accounts unless. Now your other option is what? Tell the client 400,000. What's 4 times 400,000, guys? What's 4 times 400,000? So they have a choice of pulling out 34,000, or they have a choice of pulling 16,000. Which would they rather have? Is that a big difference or a small difference? And with the 16,000, pulling out $4,000 out of your retirement account, it's still only a 90% survivability rate. You understand that, guys? The 4% rule at this point, with what we've experienced the last 20 years, what's happened to the 4% rule is you'll only have a 90% survivability rate. Here, you could pull out almost twice, or actually you pull out more than double, right? More than double. And what happened to the chance of you running out of money? No change. So do you see now where we're saying you could either increase instead of 4%, because remember, what's 4% of 800,000 over here? Instead of what? So if you ask people, would you rather get 32 or 40? They'd rather get what? 40. And by pulling out the 40, they've increased their income by what? 25%. Yet their chance of running out of money didn't change at all. Do you guys get that, or am I talking Greek? Do you see that? Okay. So now we'll go look at the other two. This is the poorer folks. They've got a total of portfolio value of 300,000 and a home value of 150 versus home value of 300,000, portfolio value of 150. And over here, they could pull out 15,000, but what happens to their chance of running out of money? Do you see that? Do you see why we can, with this, we can basically increase the rate of return significantly from 25% to 100%, and their chance of running out of money goes down significantly. So under the 4% withdrawal rate with a first retire, $400,000 in home value, $800,000 in assets. Under the 4%, they could only pull out $32,000. Here they can pull out $40,000. Withdrawal rate of 5%. Still has the same 90% chance of running out of money. Retire number 2, where you have $800,000 home value, $400,000. With the 4% rule, they could only pull out $16,000. Here they could pull out $34,000. That's double. And their chance of running out of money is still, or survivability is 90%. Because really, would you ever tell a client, let's pull out 8.6% of your money out of your retirement accounts? I hope not. And you see the same thing here, 12 versus 15, 6,000 versus 15. Would you ever tell a client to pull out 10% of their retirement money? But what would happen, again, what if we said, well, we'll just go then, you're home rich here. When we run out of this, we'll go ahead and go to the 300,000 at that point. What did we just say about that? Can they use that strategy? No, because remember what happened to the chance of running out of money. It's the red here. Red, red. Red, red. This is return assumptions consistent with historical averages. Now remember, the historical and the current is higher or lower? With a stock says highly valued as they are now and interest rates as low as they are now, we should expect higher returns going forward or lower rate of returns going forward. Yeah, Till's got it lower. So this is more probable. So again, looking at the same people, 25,000 versus 35. Would they rather have 25 or 35? 12 or 30? 9,000 or 13,000? 4.8 or 4,800 versus 13,000. Same chances of running out of money, guys. Are we talking about different investments here? Better investments, different investments? Or are we talking about the exact same investments that they did not change their investments at all? Is this a little thing or is this a friggin' humongous thing, guys? How much more do you know right now than any competitor you're going to run into in the next 5 years? About something clients are concerned about or not concerned about? It's their number one or number two concern, income or in health. So the result of this study indicates that in the case of the typical mass affluent retiree, the probability of cash flow survival over a 30-year period would be at least 90% with an initial withdrawal rate of 5% of the portfolio's initial value. Guys, 25%, that's minimum. Thus, the reverse mortgage credit line is either the simple algorithm referred to in the coordinated strategy suggested by Sachs and Sachs, and the more complex algorithm by Pfeiffer, Salter, and Evensky. And then so there's the three studies. The Sachs and Sachs, the Pfeiffer, Salter, and Evensky. Who's Evensky? A doughhead or also highly respected in the industry. And Wade Foe. So those three studies have all said increased initial withdrawal rate had approximately 90% probability of 30-year cash flow survival from Benga's 19 instead of the 4%. So we bumped from 4 to 5% with the exact same chance of running out of money. So if you only want to pull 4% out, what would happen that if you pull out 4.5 instead of 5, what would happen to your income? As compared to the 4, it would go up, right? And what would happen to your chance of losing or running out of money? If you only pulled out 4, using this strategy, only pulled out somewhere in between here, instead of 4 or 5, you pull out 4.5. Your income went up. And what happened? The chance of running out of money went down because it would be higher than that 90% success rate. Does that make sense? By contrast, if the reverse mortgage credit line was used only as a last resort and not either of the algorithms, the increase in the effective safe withdrawal rate was negligible. It didn't help you at all. Waiting until you ran out of money to tap into your house didn't help you at all. Why not, guys? Why didn't it help you? Because how are we using the line of credit in strategy number 1? What risk are we negating by using strategy number 1, where we actually use a home equity? Yeah, we only use it when the market's down, so we're getting rid of the sequence of return risk. we're minimizing the sequence of return risk, because when the market's down, that's when we will tap into the home equity loan or our line of credit. Does that make sense? So what will that do to your sequence of return risk? It mitigates it. Does that make sense? That's why waiting to tap into your house as a last resort does not work to help you get higher rate of return with less risk. So observations regarding cash flow. Computations use the rule of 30. If you're for a 90% chance, if you want a higher than 90% chance, you use the rule of 34, because then you divide your assets and home equity by 34, which means your chance of running out of money basically goes to like only 2 or 3% instead of 10%. So both results in the dollar amounts for retirees 2 and 4 that were more than twice the amounts resulting from the safe withdrawal rate when only securities portfolio was drawn upon. Even for retirees number 1 and 3, using the rule of 30 or 34, 25%. So anywhere between 25% and 100% higher. And that amount depends on how much of their assets are in their house versus how much is in the retirement portfolio, right? So if most of their assets are in their retirement strategy, you're only going to be able to bump up their income by 25%. If most of their assets are in their house, you can almost double their rate of return, which makes sense. Does that make sense? Let's say that only makes sense, but then I ask you if it makes sense. So everybody, can I get yays or nays on that? So if they're house heavy, you're going to greatly increase their income with less chance of running out of money. If they're investment heavy, it's 25% a small or a big amount. It's jumping from 32 to 40, a small or a big amount. Big. So this works across a broad range of retirees. Obviously, if they have 15 million in assets and 1 million in a house, will that matter? Will this really affect them? No. How many of your clients are that weighted that have 10 times more in their retirement accounts as their house? Very few. So does this work for almost all of your retirees? At least 90% of the people you run across, is this going to work? Yeah. So a unique feature of ACMs is that when some or all the proceeds are taken from the foreign line of credit, the amount available to be taken grows over time. After the credit line is established, the amount available to be taken grows at the same rate as the interest rate applicable to the amount. So you'll be able to get more and more money out of the HCM. The amount available when a mortgage is reestablished depends on the age of the borrower at the time and is greater, obviously, for an older borrower than a younger borrower. However, the increment of it as a function of age is substantially smaller than the increment that results from an early established and followed by the increase resulting from the application rate. All this is saying that in the end, it does not really matter what age they would pull this out, but it matters that you should do it as soon as they retire and they become dependent on a fixed or on their investments for income. Do you need to pull money out of the HCM, out of your home equity line of credit? Do you need to pull money out of it? No. So when should you get it? Yeah, now. Have it now. Now. The effective home equity line of credit interest-based amount is the amount available and important, enabling a retiree to have cash available throughout the 30-year period. Another important aspect of the HCM is a non-recourse feature, regardless of during a duration through which the HCM credit line is in place and growing. The Federal Housing Administration guarantees a retiree will never have to pay back more than the home value. For many retirees, this guarantee, when combined with the growing line of credit feature, may be significant. Other than the $125 for mandatory counseling session, there is no out-of-pocket cost for establishing or maintaining a reverse mortgage line of credit. The cost to establish a reverse mortgage line of credit itself includes 3 parts, all of which become a part of the debt. These amounts can be negotiated by the lender and brought down from a high of approximately $12,000 a year to zero in exchange for high or ongoing rates. And obviously, is this negotiable with a mortgage broker to a certain degree? Yes. The calculation, the analysis. So these analysis that I just showed you aren't saying that they got a free home equity loan. Okay. They had to pay for this. So the calculations in this used the $7,500 in fees comprised of $3,000 for the mortgage insurance premium through HUD and $3,000 origination fee calculated as average of the figures shown on Mortgage Professor website, plus $1,500 in closing costs. So they said it was $7,500. So they did negotiate it down from $1,200 down to $7,500 because if you're smart, you can do that. So now these are apples. So that's saying that these right here are apples to apples, or they were fairyland where they got a free mortgage loan, or is it apples to apples? Yeah, it's same. It's apples to apples. So that's a way you can increase your income by 25% to twice as much income with less chance of running out of money. Why is this information valuable? For two reasons. One is we now have changed this goal sheet. When you go into the website now, it's going to say, when you're doing the goal script, you're going to say, you're going to use, there is a way to increase your income by 25 to 100% with less chance of running out of money. Can you look them straight in the eye? Can you, on a Bible in front of now, with the information you have now, can you, with your hand on a Bible, on primetime TV in front of 250 million people, look people in the eye and tell them that you know a way to increase your income by 25% to 100% with less chance of running out of money? Is this more or less specific than saying, I can get you more income with less chance of running out of money and allow you to pay more or less taxes? Yeah. So what you want to also stress, besides getting 25 to 100% less chance of running out of money, is what? Is that a little or a high increase in income? So that means your risk of running out of money should go up or down. If we're pulling out more, should we have less or more of a chance of running out of money? We should have more. But in this case, it actually what? Goes what? Becomes less. So on a scale of 1 to 5, how important would it be for me to run you through the analysis of how we do that? What are they going to say on a scale of 1 to 5? So we've upped. Then, if you want to apply that to the sale plan, what happens to our sale plan? Holy crap, that's now on what? If you include this component with the sale plan is now on steroids. Does that make sense? So is this a little thing or a big thing for you to get very comfortable with? So Missy, we have the article, we have the reference article, right? Where do we put that?
Yes, that's underneath the website. It's actually underneath the archive library, and it's underneath the lifetime income section. And so we'll be adding some more information here after the call. We'll take a snippet of the HECM portion of today's call and add that as well under there as well. So
guys, I know this is I'm breaking some cardinal sins of PowerPoints in that I have a huge amount of verbiage on slides, but do you excuse me occasionally when we have something like this to just give you all the information in the slides like that instead of something that's easier? Good. So everybody's saying yes, good. So go back, watch this video a couple of times, read the article, get proficient on this so you can look people in the eye and tell them that you can do this. This is a huge thing, as well as all the other goals. I mean, the taxation one, getting them a 1% tax bracket, getting them so they can pull out 7% of their retirement accounts out with no tax. That's important, as well as all the other things, getting long-term care, 2 years of long-term care without expensive premiums. The program that gets their that will replace their spouse's income when they die, and Social Security takes away their check. Those are all things that are going to get people to opt in or not opt into a 21-point checklist. Strongly or not strongly? Strongly. So get good at these goals. When you do these get down these goals at the first meeting, everybody's going to want to do a 21-point checklist with you. They're all going to be okay with handing over all their documents to you. That's because they want these things. So thanks for being on the call. Hopefully you found it as exciting as I have found it. and you're able to put these in play to start to rev up the interest that you get from the people you sit down with. Make sense? You guys have a great week. We'll talk to you all next Monday. Thanks, everybody.